My studies are in painting and sculpture, and since the beginning I felt confronted with classical questions like, why do we produce objects? Why do we show them in so-called white cubes? How do bodies move in such rooms? What do they pay attention to? Can their gestures be manipulated, influenced, or scripted? In retrospect, the conceptual jump from the object of production to the subject of perception, the public, the audience as mass, was inevitable for me. Together with this, I have been writing texts and poems since I was very young. I studied and translated Greek and Latin in high school, and this shaped very much my understanding of ancient theatre and literature as coded worlds of performativity and sociality, and as culture in general as a public composition, a draping of bodies that perform for others. I never saw myself as an object maker and have always rather tried to explore how collective history, political speech, literary heritage and slips of the tongue enter urban architecture, public space, private rooms, and yes, white cubes too. My interest in making the choir an object comes from this desire of flipping aesthetic experience inside out, imagining how a group of people who look at the world and articulate it verbally can become sculptures or paintings themselves to be looked at in return. This is why I define the choir a closed performative object or a silhouette. It becomes a many-headed polyphonic musical instrument that talks back to the public, the mass it is made of.
Oblivion, a nasty beast we all somehow managed to domesticate. We come back to the quicksand arena to remind ourselves of it. The wrong rips and it's pitch dark in the phrase. Again, do we remember? Scheisse. Do we restart? We forgot. Do we restart? We forgot.
It is an acoustic machine that builds sound access through space, can move through it in a scripted, compact manner, and yet is fragile and fragmented, made of the many contradictory multilingual identities that compose it. Rage is Not a Luxury is a workshop series conceived and facilitated by my friend and fellow artist Nene Noy, who is a poet and performer based in Belgium. I met Noy about 2 years ago when they led this workshop during a writing residency in France. As a trained artist interested in speech as embodied practice, I was fascinated by the way Noy investigates and breaks down screaming, growling, grunting as forms of vocal expression deeply encoded within the performance of gender, political self-determination, and the socialization of emotions from joy to anger or pleasure. The show itself was for me a polyphony of voices and collaborators, like for instance musicians Nana Takvarelia and Jakob Jentgens, who produced the soundtrack for the film installation and the performance, contributing to the work with new compositions based on field recordings of protests across Georgia, Germany, and France. They brought to life a moving soundscape of voices, inflammatory speeches, polyphonic chants, and noises. My desire to explore polyphony is deeply linked to my fascination for Georgia, a country I keep coming back to, and a magical place of inspiration for me, foreign and yet always familiar. But mostly I was amazed at how I felt I was reconnecting with a part of myself, more vulnerable, more emotional, more spiritual maybe, which until then I had, in a way, rationalized away in my artistic practice. Georgian singing unfolds at dinner time, at birthday parties, at weddings, with an emotional intensity that catches you by surprise. There is no clear separation between formal performance and intimate, familiar, informal get-togethers. Singing is a living thing that can happen at any given moment of conviviality, as well as humming and tuning breaks the barrier between passive listeners and professional performers. So the blurring of this rigid separation between song and speech, between musical composition and everyday improvisation, is something I find extremely captivating and I try to reproduce in my work. In my 2 months residency at Pivô in Salvador da Bahia, I'm interested in exploring 3 main strands where I understand the theatrical and the performative interweaving in the city's rich cultural history: religious syncretism, carnival celebrations, and Angolan Capoeira. I'm calling my research project Syncretic Futures, Performance Practices in Motion, and envision it as a tapestry of fragmented, interwoven histories of the body in Salvador, the memories it has inherited, and the utopias it envisions.